I only meant to thank him, but the second the door clicked shut behind him, I knew I had crossed a line I could never uncross. They say grief comes in waves, but for me, it was more like fog. It didn't crash. It settled, quietly, permanently, into the corners of my house and the hollows of my chest. After James died, the silence in this place stopped being peaceful. It became its own presence, loud in its stillness, heavy in its absence. My name is Claire. I'm 52. And for the past 3 years, this house has felt like a museum no one visits. The photos stay where they've always been. The furniture sits undisturbed. The rooms are exactly as James left them. And yet, none of it feels like home anymore. Just artifacts. Proof that once there was laughter. Once there was warmth. Now I talk to the kettle, to the floorboards, to the damn fridge when it hums too loud. And last week, I talked to the pipe beneath the kitchen sink. It started with a quiet drip, innocent enough. But by afternoon it was pouring, brown and mean, soaking through the cabinet wood and pooling onto the tile. I tried to tighten it, to shut off the water valve. My fingers fumbled. My knees buckled when I crouched too fast. And then I panicked. Ridiculously. My throat tightened, and all I could think was, I can't do this. Not alone. That's when the doorbell rang. I shuffled to the front, wiping my hands on a dish towel, heart thudding with embarrassment. I probably looked like a wet chicken. But when I opened the door, the breath caught in my throat. It was Ethan. I hadn't seen him in years, not since he was a teenager, all elbows and awkwardness, always tagging along behind his mother. Back then, he barely said a word. Just hovered, polite but distant, like a shadow. But now he was tall, broad, the kind of groan that makes you blink twice before you recognize the boy inside the man. His voice was lower, his eyes the same stormy green, but steadier somehow. He had a toolbox in one hand. "Hey, Miss Claire," he said. "Your neighbor called my mom. She said something about a leak." I blinked at him. For a moment, I didn't remember how to speak. "Yes," I said finally. "Under the sink." "I'm sorry to bother you." "You didn't," he interrupted gently. "Let me take a look." And just like that, he stepped past me, calm and solid. His presence filled the kitchen like warmth. I stood back, clutching my elbows, watching as he crouched with ease, tools clicking, sleeves rolled to his elbows. "I used to hate this kitchen," he murmured, half to himself. "When I was little, it always smelled like rosemary. I thought it was soap." I smiled, a real smile, the kind that tugged at something dusty inside me. "It was soup, actually. James always overdid it." Ethan looked up at me and grinned. So I wasn't crazy. It took him less than 20 minutes. He worked silently, precisely, only asking once for a towel. And when he finished, he wiped his hands and said, "You shouldn't have to deal with this alone, Miss Claire." He called me Miss Claire. So respectful, so careful. And yet there was something in his eyes. Not quite concern. Not quite pity either. Something quieter. Like he was seeing me, not just helping. I wanted to ask how he'd gotten so grown, but instead I said thank you. He smiled again, nodded, and left. I watched him walk down the path, toolbox swinging. And for the first time in months, my chest felt less tight. The next day, he came back. I heard his knock just after lunch. I assumed I'd left something behind, a wrench or a glove. But when I opened the door, he was holding a small box of tea bags. "Saw these at the store," he said, awkwardly. "Didn't know if you still liked this kind." I did. I invited him in. We had tea at the kitchen table. He drank his black. I added lemon. We talked about nothing. The weather, his new job at the garage, his mom's latest obsession with zucchini bread. It was light. Easy. Easier than I'd felt in a long time. He came again on Sunday. Said he had a few hours free. Asked if I needed help in the yard. I said no. He trimmed the hedges anyway. He didn't ask for anything. I didn't stop him. There's something about being alone for too long that makes you forget how to react to kindness. The first instinct is suspicion, then guilt, then gratitude so deep it feels like debt. That's what I told myself. That's why my heart fluttered when he knocked. That's why I sat straighter when I heard his boots on the porch. That's why, when he handed me that envelope from the mailbox, fingers brushing mine, I looked up too fast and met his eyes too long. He didn't look away. Neither did I. I thought about that look all night. I brought more soup, he said one Tuesday evening, stepping in like he belonged. He didn't. Not really. But he felt like he did. The air turned different when he entered. I noticed things the way his shoulders filled his flannel, the quiet confidence in his hands when he reached for the pot, the slight dimple that appeared when he smirked. Your house is too quiet, he said once, walking through the living room. You ever play music? Not in years. Mind if I put something on? I shrugged. A few minutes later, soft blues poured from the speaker. The kind of music that wraps around you, heavy and slow. He sat on the floor, cross-legged, adjusting the volume. You used to dance, he said. I remember. In the kitchen. That was a lifetime ago. You still could. I shook my head. But inside, something stirred. He stayed longer that night. We drank wine instead of tea. He made me laugh, big and stupid, the kind that almost hurts. And when he left, I stood at the door long after he disappeared into the night. The house felt colder without him. I started waiting for him, subtly at first. Brushing my hair before 5, changing into something with sleeves that hugged just a bit more. Spritzing perfume, not too much, just enough to make me feel like I still was someone. I told myself it was about dignity, about routine. But the truth was simpler. I wanted to be seen. By him. One afternoon, I leaned too far reaching for a photo on the high shelf. The stool wobbled. My ankle twisted. I would have fallen hard, but his arms caught me. He had just arrived, quiet as ever. And now he was holding me, his arms strong around my waist, his breath warm on my cheek. I froze. The air thickened. His hand didn't move, but his fingers tightened slightly. I looked up, and he looked down. His eyes searched mine like they were asking a question I didn't know how to answer. I stepped back. Too fast. My breath shaky. Ethan, you're young. I'm still beautiful. I blinked. And I think, he said slowly, you feel more than you admit. He left after that. No tea. No small talk. Just the click of the door behind him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I didn't know what I'd done, or what I'd let begin. The next time he came, I pretended nothing happened. I wore the plain cardigan. No perfume. Hair pinned back. He noticed. Of course he did. You okay? He asked. Fine. He didn't press. Instead, he made us tea. Set the table. Lit the little candle I hadn't touched since James' birthday 2 years ago. We talked. But not much. The silence between us was louder than words. He brought pie. Said his mom baked too much. I said thank you. He stood to leave. I followed him to the door. Then he paused, looked at me, and walked back. He didn't speak. He just reached out and gently closed the door behind him. That sound, that soft click, was louder than thunder. I didn't stop him. I didn't move. I just stood there while he walked to me. And I knew. This wasn't about help anymore. It wasn't even about him. It was about something I hadn't felt in years. Not desire. Not even love. Just being alive. I wish I could say I didn't remember the exact moment he stepped toward me. I wish I could say it was a blur, a dream, a trick of low lighting and wine. But no. I remember everything. The feel of the rug under my bare feet. The faint creak of the door hinge, the sound of the pie plate rattling in the sink when I backed into it. And most of all, the pause. That terrible, beautiful pause before he touched me. Not rushed, not presumptuous, just certain. His hand hovered near mine, not quite touching, waiting, and I didn't say no. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling like it might offer answers. The house was still, too still. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was charged, like the pause between lightning and thunder. I kept hearing that click. The door shutting, not with force, but finality. It wasn't the noise that haunted me. It was the meaning. He didn't rush. He didn't assume. He simply waited. Until my body answered for me. I didn't speak. He didn't ask. And somehow that made it worse. Or better. I don't know. The next morning I wore long sleeves. I couldn't explain why. Nothing had happened. Not really. We hadn't crossed that line. Not with our hands. Not technically. But in my mind, the borders had already blurred. I found myself brushing my fingertips along the edge of the kitchen counter where he'd leaned. I remembered the sound of his breath near my ear when he bent down to pick up a fallen fork. I remembered the tremor in my own chest when he looked at me not as a son looks at his mother's friend, but as a man looks at a woman he's chosen. And God help me. I didn't hate it. He came back on Thursday. Casual. Like always. With a little bag of plums. Saw these and thought of you, he said. I laughed too loudly. Do I look like a woman who eats plums? He smiled, leaning against the doorway. You look like a woman who deserves sweetness. I didn't answer. I couldn't. It got worse when I was alone. During the day, I managed. There were errands. The news. The clock. But at night, I was defenseless. I'd lay in bed and picture the way his fingers brushed the rim of his mug. How he sat knees wide, relaxed, assured like the world didn't trouble him. I'd hear his voice in the silence. You're still beautiful. And I'd feel it. Worse, I started reaching for it. Intentionally. Standing in front of the mirror longer than needed. Changing my blouse before he came by. Adding mascara, not too much, just enough to feel like I still could. It was shameful. And it was thrilling. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I told myself, you're 52, Claire. You're old enough to know the difference between loneliness and longing. But what I didn't admit was, I was both. Then came the stairway. It was a Friday afternoon. I was balancing a box of old sweaters, trying to be useful. He arrived just in time to see me stumble. Whoa! He caught me with both hands, one arm banded tight around my waist. For a heartbeat, two, we didn't move. His chest against my shoulder. My breath trapped in my throat. The box falling, forgotten, to the floor. I could feel his heartbeat. Not fast. Not nervous. Just steady. Like mine. Careful, he said, voice lower than usual. I pulled back. Ethan, I began. My voice too soft. I know, he said. I looked up. His face was close. His eyes darker. You're young, I whispered. I'm not that young, he said. And you're not as old as you think. I tried to smile. It didn't hold. I mean it, he added. You matter. You still move people. Move. I felt it like a shiver down my spine. After he left, I sat on the stairs and cried. Not loud. Not tragic. Just quiet, aching tears. Not because of guilt, but because he was right. I had forgotten how it felt to matter. The next few days blurred. He didn't come by, and I told myself that was good. That it gave me time to return to myself. But the truth is, I waited. I stared at the driveway through the kitchen window. I turned down invites from friends. Said I had a cold. Needed rest. What I needed was him. Or the feeling of him. Then Tuesday. He arrived without a knock. Just opened the door like he used to when he was a kid. "Brought you something," he said. It was a book. A novel I'd once mentioned loving in passing. A new edition with a note tucked inside. "Thought you might want to feel something again." I pressed the cover to my chest. "You remember everything?" I asked. He looked at me too long. "Only what matters." I set the book down. The air between us shifted. He stepped forward, just a fraction. I stepped back, just a fraction more. We stood like that, two magnets resisting and aching in equal measure. He reached for my hand. Not forcefully, not possessively, just a touch. I let him. Later, I told myself that was the moment it became real. Not the brush of skin. Not the caught breaths. But that hand in mine. That quiet choice, made by two people who should have known better, but didn't care. That night, I lay in bed beside no one. The house held its breath. I turned onto my side and pressed my fingers to my palm where his had rested. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I simply trembled. Like something inside me had started. And couldn't be stopped now. During the day, I was still Claire. The woman who waved to neighbors while watering her porch flowers. Who answered texts from her sister with little heart emojis. Who returned library books on time and brought zucchini muffins to the church bazaar. During the day, I was what I had always been. But at night, I became someone else. Not wild, not reckless, just untethered. I moved through the house differently. Lights dimmer, curtains drawn tighter, music quieter, but always on. Sometimes jazz, sometimes silence. The silence was worse. That's when I heard him. Not his voice exactly. His breath. His laugh. The way he said my name like it was a secret only he knew. I lied to everyone. Feeling good, I'd say. Sleeping better. Thank you. I lied to my sister on the phone. I lied to the pharmacist who asked if the new anxiety meds were helping. I lied to myself in the mirror when I touched my hair and said aloud, "You're just grateful." Grateful doesn't keep you up at night. Grateful doesn't make your stomach flip when you pass by the hallway where his hand brushed yours. Grateful doesn't make your skin remember the heat of someone's breath when no words were said. No, this wasn't gratitude anymore. Friday came fast. He arrived just after 7, holding a pie. Said my mom baked too many, he joked. But we both knew she hadn't. I made tea. We talked about nothing. Trains. Old music. His frustration with car parts that never fit right. I laughed at all the right places. But underneath, I was spinning. Every glance, every silence, felt rehearsed. Or maybe preordained. The air felt dense. Like we were underwater. Like speaking too loud might break the world. I set his teacup down too hard. "Thank you," I said suddenly. "For this week. For everything." He didn't move. I smiled, awkward, too wide. "I don't know how I would have gotten through it without you." He stood. I followed, walking him to the door. He opened it, stepped one foot out. Then stopped. He turned. And walked back. No hesitation. No drama. Just purpose. He reached behind him. And gently, so gently, closed the door. The sound was soft. Barely audible. But inside me, something cracked like glass. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I watched him walk to me, not slowly, not quickly, just directly. Like he knew where he was going. And when he reached me, he didn't reach for my waist or my hand. He reached for my face. His fingers were careful, reverent, as if I might shatter if he touched too hard. He didn't kiss me. He just looked. And in his eyes, I saw it. Not desire. Not hunger. But certainty. What happened next can't be explained in the language people use. It wasn't an action. It was a shift. A dissolving. A surrender of years I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The moment his arms circled me, I stopped resisting. The moment my hands found the buttons on his shirt, I stopped pretending. That night wasn't soft. It wasn't wild. It was something in between. Like a storm that doesn't destroy, just reorders everything. When it was over, we sat side by side in the quiet. His arm around my back, my hand on his thigh. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Morning made it worse. I woke first. The light too bright. The sheet too warm where his body had been. I walked barefoot to the kitchen and held the counter like it could steady me. He came in behind me, shirtless. Hair mussed. He didn't try to kiss me. Just poured coffee. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. "I don't know," I said honestly. He nodded. "That's fair." He reached for my hand. I let him. For a moment. Then I pulled back. "We can't," I began. "We already did," he said, without malice. I wanted to scream. Or cry. Or laugh. But I did none of it. I just sat down at the table and drank my coffee like it was medicine. For the next week, I became two women. The Claire who smiled politely at the mailman. And the Claire who pressed her fingers to her own lips at night, remembering the way his had felt. I washed the sheets twice. It didn't matter. His scent lingered. Not just on fabric. In me. He texted once. "Thinking of you. Let me know if you need anything." I didn't answer. I deleted it. Then I rewrote it in my journal, word for word. He came by unannounced that Friday. Stood on the porch like a question. I didn't open the door right away. I looked at him through the glass. He didn't knock. He just waited. When I finally opened it, I didn't say hello. He didn't say anything either. He just looked at me. "Do you want me to go?" he asked. I should have said yes, but I stepped aside. He sat on the couch. I brought him tea. We talked like strangers, like old friends. Like something in between. Then he asked gently, "Is this a secret now?" I didn't answer. He waited. "I don't know what it is," I whispered. "But I can't. I can't tell anyone." He nodded. But I saw it. The flicker in his eyes. He didn't want to be a secret. But he didn't leave either. That night, I stood in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. The woman in the mirror didn't look sad. She didn't even look guilty. She looked like someone who had woken up and didn't know how to go back to sleep. He didn't come back. Not the next week. Not the week after. No message. No knock. No smile hovering in my doorway, asking if I'd had lunch yet. Just silence. And I didn't chase it. Not because I didn't want to, but because I understood. Some moments are too bright to last. Too precise. Like thread pulled through silk, it only takes one tug before the fabric can't return to what it was. I sat at the window most mornings. Not waiting. Just aware. Of the light shifting across the floor. Of the shape of the trees beyond the porch. Of the sound of wind brushing against the side of the house. For the first time in years, I felt each minute. Not as a burden. Not as an ache. But as mine. I told no one. It would have been so easy to confess, to cry, to frame it as a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. He hadn't tricked me. I hadn't been naive. I had simply wanted and allowed myself to have. Even just once. Sometimes I imagine he was bored. Curious. Sometimes I imagine he meant everything he said. Maybe it doesn't matter. Because what I remember isn't his hands, or his words, or even the warmth of his body against mine. I remember how I felt in his presence. Not invisible. And that, more than anything, is what I keep returning to. The town moved on. As towns do. I smiled at grocery store clerks. I returned to the library. I dropped off soup at the church. But I moved differently now. My body wasn't something I apologized for anymore. I wore earrings again. Even on errands. I spritzed perfume before taking out the trash. I bought silk instead of cotton, Not for anyone else. Just for me. My sister visited one weekend. You seem lighter, she said over coffee. Like you're sleeping better. I am, I said. In a different way. She didn't press. But her eyes lingered on my face like she was trying to figure out what had changed. I wanted to say, I remembered I was alive. But I didn't. I just smiled. There's a quiet that comes after the breaking. It's not peace. Not yet. It's more like breath after a sob, that pause before you know whether you'll cry again or not. That's what the weeks felt like. Breath. Suspended. I saw him once more. By accident. At the hardware store. He was in the parking lot, talking to someone I didn't recognize. He looked different, sunburned, distracted, tired maybe. He didn't see me. I watched for 10 seconds. Maybe less. And then I left. That night, I didn't cry. I just sat on the edge of my bed and said softly to no one, "Thank you," because it wasn't about him anymore. It hadn't been for a while. It was about me, the woman I became when he looked at me like I mattered. The woman I found again after so many years of simply disappearing in plain sight. He gave me nothing permanent. No promises. No explanations. Just a moment. But that moment carved a doorway inside me, and I stepped through. Now I still live in this house. The same walls. The same furniture. The same pictures of James, smiling from the mantel. But I move through it differently. I don't wait. I don't ache. I still have coffee by the window. It still gets cold. But sometimes, I let it. And sometimes, when I hear a door shut, that soft click, I don't flinch. I just breathe. Because some doors close quietly, but they leave something wide open inside you. I was just grateful. That's what I told myself. But the truth is, I was starving. And now I know how it feels to be full. Even if only for a moment. Even if no one else will ever know.